死の危機感や世界終焉の危機感を用いていたこの1000年前の時代が私たちの心を捉えた。なんていうのは全部嘘。
It would appear that the writers have been watching YouTube videos about everyone's theories on Alice in Borderland, because when it came down to the ending and the truth of the world, it was like a cavalcade of ridiculous notions. One after the other, Mira reveals a torrent of truth that hits on every single theory fans have thrown at the show, including our own theories of virtual reality, Lost, and Westworld. And then, the biggest revelation of them all, it was all in Arisu's head, a true Alice in Wonderland allegory. Mira explains to Arisu that he had suffered massive trauma at the loss of Karube and Chota, gaslighting him into believing they had been killed before even stepping foot in this illusionary land. We, of course, immediately called foul. How could that be true? Everyone he's met and bonded with had lives before this land. We had seen their tribulations in the hopes of returning to their lives or starting over. This truth would practically erase all that character growth. But the show knew this. It was a ploy by Mira to get Arisu to quit the game, as the final game was simply to complete 3 rounds of croquet.
In a last-ditch effort to get Arisu to wake up from the nightmare, Usagi puts her own life at risk. Fortunately, Arisu wakes up and finishes the game. Mira never actually reveals the truth of the land, as the surviving players have to choose whether they'd like to be permanent residents or reject it. Most of our surviving cast reject citizenship. The truly deplorable accept it, but that would be their undoing. We're finally taken back to the events that happened prior to the games, as everyone that participated had been present in the Shibuya crossing that day. A meteor had exploded over Tokyo, causing a disaster resulting in the loss of countless lives. Chief among those lives were those who did not survive the games and those who had accepted permanent citizenship. The reality, Borderland. Everyone who had been involved in this tragedy, their heart would stop for 1 whole minute. This explains Anne's theory that the land's time was flowing at an accelerated rate. Everyone wakes up in the real world, recovering from or holding on to their dear life, trying to survive what otherwise would be insurmountable injuries from the blast. Arisu wakes up to his brother explaining survivor's guilt, and in so doing revealing the truth of Borderland, the border between life and death. A measure of someone's will to live, the will to survive, for those who had not already passed from the initial blast from the meteorite. Borderland served as an allegory for the moment in time where you fight for your life. This is very different from Purgatory or Limbo, like Black Mirror's visualization of a dating app. Borderland serves as a visualization of what the mind goes through when it's trying to hang on.
In the 60 seconds where everyone's heart had stopped, they had entered Borderland to participate in games that would test their mettle and resolve. Among the survivors were those who had completely and unequivocally resolved to live, to start over, or to return to their world, fighting, clawing, and inching their way back to their loved ones. It would certainly explain why those like Aguni, Akane, and Kuina fighting mortal wounds in Borderland would seemingly cheat death. Their resolve to live acted as an armor in Borderland. As Aguni expresses several times, he had cheated death. There's an element of mysticism here that we can appreciate, a surreality that transcends mind games, psychology, and technology. What if there was no purgatory or limbo? What if Borderland is real? As we think about existential topics such as this, we often think about the afterlife. While in purgatory or limbo, we await judgment, but in Borderland, you are in complete control of whether or not you survive. The Joker game? That was it. The meteorite exploded and sent all victims whose hearts had stopped into the Borderland. Once returned to the world, the Joker symbolizes everyone's ability to deliver on the promises they had made, to start over and continue. In Arisu's case, it was to start over together with Usagi. In everyone else's case, we'll have to leave it up to interpretation. After all, the Joker card in all decks represents an interpretation of utility. What value do we derive from the Joker card in any game? It's up to us.
Another interpretation of the Joker card is that it all seems to be what you make of it. From our view, the low-hanging fruit tells us that they all survived to start over. On the other hand, it's just a mean joke. Something otherworldly is playing a cruel joke on us all. We are simply pawns in a larger game being played by gods. But this was the truth of it at the end. A visualization of victims fighting in Borderland for the chance to survive, to start their hearts again. For the Queen of Hearts was the final game. What do you guys think about the ending? Was it satisfying? Do you believe any of Mira's lies about the truth of the land? Let us know in the comments below.
Oh, man.
My mind is melting. That was one of the most mind-blowing endings I've ever been a part of.
Yeah, I mean, right off of the bat, all of the lies that Mira tells are stuff that we had, theorized about ever since season 1. And like from the first explanation, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Then the second explanation, I was like, what?
I was hoping it was completely true. It was like, yeah, 1,000 or thousands of years later, everyone has just experienced all of this advancement in technology, and like everyone has, kind of like surpassed eternal life, and now we're just playing games with each other.
Yeah, just kind of desensitized to the mortality of life. They're playing these games to kind of reinvigorate that feeling in themselves. But, as soon as she entered the territory of this was all in Arisu's head, right, because of trauma, and this was like something psychiatric, I'm like, no, everybody had lives.
Right.
Chishiya was a doctor, Kuzuryu was a lawyer, and everybody had lives. Like if you had dossied up to just all in Arisu's head and he was kind of mentally ill, and you just erase all of that character growth, as we said in the beginning of this video. And so I was like, nope. This is just a ploy by Mira. Again, she is messing around. Then the final revelation, which wasn't an explanation by Mira, but just rather a realization, right? As everybody chose to reject citizenship, it was kind of like, I saw it as an allegory of like, do you accept death?
Yes.
And do you reject it? And everyone that has survived in the end, everyone that came back in the final episode had rejected it. And
I mean, those who survived.
Yeah, and for the most part didn't get the chance to verbally say I reject it, but she had resolved to return with Kuina. And that was incredible to see her survive.
Oh my god, it was just so amazing. My mind was blown as I was watching the final episode, like in the very end, and you were right there with me, and I was just like, oh my god, they like flatlined, and that was like a split second, and like however long it takes to flatline, your heartbeat stops, and then and there's a chance for you to live again after you flatline. Most often than not, they don't survive, and which explains why like the games happen, and like majority of the players like died, and some players survived, and that explains the will to live, right? Like to me, when I was going through that emotion, I was like, oh my, like it just reminded me of Flatliners. Like it was just like the chance of surviving between life and death is so slim, and it's like a thin line, and this show was freaking amazing.
It was.
Oh
and this whole explanation is kind of like teetering between Flatliners and Lost, except where instead of being in limbo, like this kind of represents just that small minute chance that you might survive. And it explained a lot of what happened where, they were fighting the King of Spades, and you could tell yourself, you could see those were some mortal ass wounds, and none of them would have survived. But then I started thinking, like, this is their will to live on display. This is Aguni, being shot or at least grazed in the head, and then coming back to fight for more, and then having that moment of closure with Hatter, and then Akane, who was just crawling and
she got destroyed.
She got destroyed with that machine gun, and then like she crawled just to be by Aguni's side, and in the end they didn't know each other, but that represented their will to live. Kuina got stabbed multiple times.
I know. That was crazy.
You died, but she lived.
But like, you know what? That was probably okay. So I'm debating whether episode 7 and episode 8 was the best, because I could equally put them both on the same pedestal, because episode 7 was just like the climax of action, right? Like just the sequences of events, or the sequences of fights and choreography between the remaining survivors against the King of Spades was just spectacular. It's one of the best sequences I've ever seen in any kind of drama or any kind of like action-oriented film.
That was like Borderland.
Oh my god!
I was about to say that's Borderline. That's Borderland. John Wick.
It was just fantastic.
Yeah, I had to rewind that sequence several times just because, like, right at the moment where Akane comes in with the bow and just like spins around, goes,
Man.
it was a great. I think both episodes kind of serve different purposes. So I would say episode 7 was like the best action in all of the series, and episode 8 just kind of blew your mind in terms of revelations.
Oh my god, it's amazing the morality and this and the lesson of this show is just so freaking profound, and it's like I am still mind blown of like the acceptance of life, the acceptance of death, you know, like the fight for survival. It all kind of comes down to like just like a split second in real life, but an eternity in and I guess in like an illusionary world.
But what do you guys think? Leave it in the comment section below. We have a lot of, you know, interpretations in our intro to this video in terms of what the Joker card meant, the revelation of this kind of borderland between life and death. Leave your theories in the comment section below or your interpretations of the Joker card. But that is it for this video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe for more. Like it and hit the bell icon to turn on notifications. But as always, this is where we're watching this Sunday. We'll see you in Borderland.
관심이 없죠. 난 그래도 그대네요. 밤하늘의 별